She will use kind of very easy, interesting FX to kind of work around the minimalism that she has in her track. Hi guys, welcome back on weltsound. It's a bright, beautiful and sunny morning, and we're gonna have a look today at the sound of Charlotte de Witte and her label KNTXT. I was preparing a little session where I have my interpretation of her sound, and I'm gonna present it to you. Stick around for the end. There's a lot of tricks in this session and a lot of ways you can work fast and get to results pretty fast. And also you can get the whole session for free. So just get the link in the description and get your free Ableton session with all the samples and presets I've used. All right, before we start, I want to real quick play back the session to you so you have an idea over what we're talking about. That's the way I try to rework the sound of Charlotte de Witte. And I want to go through all the different sounds with you, starting obviously with kick and bass. And even though Charlotte uses a wide range of different kicks, I kind of noticed there's one particular kick sound she kind of seems to prefer overall. And that's those really, really nice saturated and distorted kicks. They shouldn't be too heavily distorted because it then would sound like kind of hard techno style. But yes, let's have a look and listen at the kick here real quick. So basically we have two layers and they're both saturated and also distorted via the pedal. And we want to make a quick playback to the different layers without the effects on here, so you can kind of see how you can shape just a basic 909. It's the basic 909 sample from Ableton to this kind of very unique and individual kick. All right, let's check it out with the saturator first. Especially important to have this hard curve algorithm here, which really pushes the signal a lot if we compare it to the analog clip, for example. Just not that much of saturation and compression in general. So let's have a look now at the pedal. You can hear it is working more on the overtones and not on the general saturation of the signal, but it's really important to get this kind of dirtiness. And then I also added another layer, which is basically the same. It's the same kick. It's just a little different setting here on the saturator and just a little different setting on the pedal. And then also an overdrive and an EQ and some compression to round it up. So it's basically a transient sound. Let's have a listen here. Really important to give the kick this dirty feeling and the texture, right? I made a whole video about drums and textures on this channel, so you should check that out if you want to know more about this. And yes, there's just a saturator on the group, so to say, on the body and the texture to put it all together in a nice sum signal. All right, next up in the kick and bass group, we also have a rumble, and this one's actually not too special. Just a little bit of saturation on here as well to give it more kind of overtones in the bass area, and we cut the highs for sure, because sometimes there's clicking when it comes to situations like this here. And then there's a texture loop. This was made out of a percussion sample and got resampled kind of often. It's not easy to show the way of resampling here, but I want to do a video on resampling soon. But in general, that's just a noise layer. You can use any kind of noise textures. You can even go, I don't know, on YouTube and find crazy videos where there's nice noise layers and you can just add them here. And this is actually really important in her sound. She always uses a lot of texture on her drums, a lot of kind of noise, loop, background, atmospheres. And they're actually much louder than in a lot of other productions. So if you want to go into that direction, definitely try to apply this kind of noisy texture. Also on the kick and bass group, we got a bass low extender. That's a preset from the glue compressor in Ableton. It just works very well with the long attack and short release, and also a little bit of limiting for the kick and bass to be really, really put together. And that's it about the kick and bass. Next up, we want to actually have a listen to the toms. So let's check those out. What they're playing is a rhythm that is actually also a lot of times made with another kick drum or like with the same kick drum. But in this case, I wanted to use toms. She does it sometimes with the kick drum and sometimes with a tom sample. I just put a lot of hard curve saturation on here as well to give it this kind of dirty texture. And it's really just there for the groove and really important also. But you can use kicks as well. That's also pretty standard in her sound. And then we have this kind of clap percussion. So she wouldn't use the 2 and 4 clap too often, I would say. But what I found a lot is those kind of not too often repeating percussions like this clap only on the 4, little bit of reverb, and a little bit of overdrive to give it more texture and crisp here as well. And that's everything on the percussions already. Next up, we got the hi-hats, and I wanted to point it out as obvious as possible that this is all 909. She uses a lot of 909 samples. I mean, that's what kind of everybody does, right? But they're very rough, and if you have a look at the signals here, the open 909 is completely clean, no FX at all. This one is a 16th note hi-hat, so it just got a little sidechain with the kick here. And the cymbal gets a reverb to be a little more wide and to have this stereo kind of feeling. But it's essentially just a basic 909 sound. So let's have a listen here just to get you in the right mood. And that's already all the magic about the beat. I think it's not too much of a difficult beat. It's more like the percussions just have to roll and be aggressive and have a lot of texture because the sound is kind of minimalistic she's doing. So what we want is all the elements to point out a lot of energy and a lot of unique sound as well. Also on the head group here, we got this head bus rack. It's part of my artist pack, kind of a little gift for you here. You can change the settings here to get the sound you want for your hi-hats. And I would say, let's move to acid. In addition to the very, very textured drum, there was 3 things that I really wanted to cover in this kind of recreation of her sound. Obviously, she uses a lot of different melodies in different songs, but things that she uses most of the times is definitely a 303, definitely a choir. So we did this with a wavetable kind of formant pad, so it's not really a choir. She uses a lot of times real voices, but I didn't want to include any external samples like in this big context here. And then we got a atmospheric voice that's just some random words sounding dark and being a little bit in the background, and an FX sound. And we want to have a look at all of this together, right? By the way, 303, you're going to get the audio file. This is totally made with the weltsound 303 available on our webpage. And it's a very, very quick and easy way to have an Ableton only 303 that works pretty well. So let's have a listen to the sound here. The one thing that's really important on the 303 is the pedal, as it gives this kind of very, very distorted feeling, but it's just this kind of native 303 distortion. If we put it off, you will know what I mean. It's really doing a lot, and also the more the cutoff gets down and the less envelope is on there, the more the pedal seems to work. Shaping the sound too much, but rather just adding some nice harmonics. But here it's like really completely messing around with the sound. Charlotte is using 303s a lot in all kind of different shapes and colors, so to say. And in this one I decided to kind of rebuild one of her tracks more or less. And the pattern is actually pretty easy. So we have 2 accents up here and 1 note in between, and then we have 6 notes, and that's actually one thing you can do with this Ableton only 303 rebuild that we have on the weltsound page. You can use different velocities, so there's not only accent or no accent, but you can also use different velocities to kind of have this build up here, which also will open the cutoff just a little bit. So I want you to hear what I mean. Right, so simple patterns, you will always have this kind of simple but very effective 303 pattern. And besides that, there's only some compression to catch the accents just a little bit, and some saturation to glue it all together, a little bit of sidechain with the kick. So not really difficult to process this. You can get the 303 in the weltsound shop, as I said before, and this pedal setting, you can get it for free when you download the session. So very easy to get this kind of very, very native 303 sound. Then we have this choir pad, and as I said before, she uses real voices a lot, but I decided to not include like samples from someone, but rather try to rebuild a pad that kind of sounds like a voice. That's actually really easy if you use formant wavetables like those 2, but obviously it doesn't sound like a real voice, it just has this kind of human character. Interestingly, we have a lot more reverb than we have dry signal here, and it's a shimmer reverb combined with this kind of chamber and large room algorithm on the convolution reverb here. And there's also an auto pan on 16th notes. It's not really panning, it's only shaping the volume. As you can see here, there's no phase, so it's more like a stutter effect or some kind of trancey stutter. And this is actually something she's using quite a lot, this kind of trancey feeling. So let's have a listen to the choir. So you can make yourself a good overview over the whole wavetable preset when you download the session. But here, let's have a look at the notes real quick. Let me explain what I did. So G sharp is the root note here. So what we added here on top of the G sharp is the D sharp, which is the perfect 5th. And then from there, you know, we have to kind of flip this, I would say, because it's actually this way around. It was built this way around. So this is the root note kind of the chord, even though it's not really a chord. Chords consist of 3 notes, but I only wanted to have 2 notes because it's a little less distinctive, you know. It doesn't really have this kind of exact tonal character, but it's more open and free for interpretation. So this one is the root note here, and then we put the root note up to the 5th and the root note up to the 6th. And the note we put on top here is actually the 2nd of the octave. It just fits the vibe here very well, has this kind of opera feeling. And that's everything about the choir patch here. Then there's 2 FX sounds, and the one is just a little I think I pitched it a little bit down, one semitone, and I had to compress it a lot, but that's just because of the sample in general. And I added 50% reverb, but it's early reflection on the convolution reverb, so it's not really having a long tail, but more making it feel stereo, even though it does not really sound like a reverb. Let's have a listen here. I guess you're not that smart. Right, I think you can hear it. It obviously sounds like there's reverb, but there's not really a long reverb tail. So that just makes it stand out because of the stereo width in the mix. And then there's this FX sound, and it's just a kind of, substitute for any possible FX sound. But I notice a lot that she will use kind of very easy, interesting FX to kind of work around the minimalism that she has in her tracks. So on this one, for example, the drop without this FX sound is not so special, because the music just continues, but if you add the FX sound here, it's just this little impact, this little ear candy of the ping pong delay. So let's just have a quick look here. This time I had to work with Serum, because I just think Serum for sound design is so intuitive and you can be so fast. So I started on 2 saw waves, then I added the FM, so the frequency modulation from the sub oscillator here, because I wanted the frequencies to be very noisy, and then I added a noise on top. So we have this kind of tonal FM sound, but also a lot of noise frequencies. So it gets also heavily distorted. You can see here drive 100, mix 100, tube algorithm, and in the end it's the delay which gives it this kind of ping pong feeling. And yes, it's a little ear candy that always helps the track to keep on being interesting. Yo guys, I hope this little insight on this recreation or interpretation of Charlotte de Witte sound was helpful for you. Don't forget to get the free session in the description, and I hope to see you very soon again on the channel.